Usually when we talk about making a tough choice in life, there's this expectation of precision.
Right, like it's supposed to be clean.
Exactly. Like it's a math equation. I mean, think about a time you walked away from a career path that was just completely burning you out. You looked at the hours, you looked at the stress, you did the math, and you just walked away.
Yeah, you categorize it and you move on.
Right. We like things to be visible, but then you step into the world of romantic attachment. Specifically, I mean, the kind of attachment that is actively destroying someone from the inside out.
The really dark stuff.
Yeah. And suddenly, that logical calculator is just broken. We're looking at a psychological landscape today that is profoundly murky.
It is the absolute definition of muddy waters.
Uh.
And, we really have to approach this entire conversation with a very specific kind of empathy.
Absolutely.
Because society so often views a man staying in a painful, destructive relationship as just, well, a sign of weakness or a blatant lack of self-respect. Constantly hear people say, why doesn't he just leave?
Yeah, like it's just that simple. Just pack your bags.
Exactly. But the truth is, this isn't about a lack of willpower at all. It is a highly complex, almost involuntary psychological response to emotional starvation.
Wow. Emotional starvation.
Yeah, we're talking about a biological survival mechanism that has essentially turned against the person it's trying to protect.
That distinction right there between weakness and a hijacked survival mechanism, that is crucial. I mean, our mission today is to pull back the curtain on the actual mechanics of this toxic attachment.
It's so necessary to name it.
It really is. We're doing a deep dive into trauma bonding, emotional dependency, and really the often ignored reality of masculine loneliness. We want to unpack the silent suffering that so many men endure.
Yeah. The suffering nobody sees.
Right. And discover how recognizing the difference between genuine love and an emotional addiction is the very first step to rebuilding your self-worth.
Because the immediate psychological reality of these dynamics is just startling. When a man is emotionally starving and finds himself in one of these intensely toxic attachments, he literally loses his ability to perceive the relationship accurately.
It literally loses the ability, like his brain changes.
Yes. His mind essentially initiates a crisis protocol. It begins performing this massive memory edit.
A memory edit.
Yeah, the brain acts as this desperate film editor, aggressively cutting out the emotional damage, the insults, the neglect, all of it, gone. And it turns the volume entirely up on the good memories.
He's only seen the highlight reel.
Exactly. He replays the way she smiled at him in the beginning. He hyper-focuses on those deep late-night conversations. The mind is actively burying the pain just to highlight the warmth.
It sounds like the brain is acting as a corrupt accountant, Like it's cooking the books to make a failing emotional business look incredibly profitable.
That is a perfect way to put it.
But I have to push back a little on this idea that it's completely involuntary. Because I think a lot of guys listening might argue that this is just, well, a lack of self-discipline.
Sure, the tough love angle.
Right. Like we all have romantic nostalgia. We all look back at an ex and remember the good vacations while conveniently forgetting the screaming matches. So why are we framing this specific memory edit as a crisis protocol rather than just, a guy refusing to set healthy boundaries?
It's a fair question. But the reality heavily refutes the idea that this is just a discipline issue. The difference lies in the actual neurochemistry of emotional starvation.
Okay, break that down for me.
So if we look at the brain of someone experiencing a true trauma bond, their prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for logical decision-making, setting boundaries, is significantly suppressed.
It's just offline.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the amygdala, which is the fear and survival center, is working in overdrive. I mean, imagine a physical body in a state of hypothermia. If you give that freezing person a tiny, flickering match, their brain isn't going to logically critique the quality of the fire. It's not going to say, well, this match isn't a furnace.
Right, it just wants heat, any heat.
Exactly. It's going to flood their system with chemical rewards for finding any warmth at all. So a man who's been emotionally starving his entire life will mistake the sheer intensity of an early, temporary warmth for genuine, healthy love.
That is so heavy.
His brain rewires itself to protect that source of emotional oxygen at all costs, completely blinding him to the fact that the very same source is also suffocating him.
So the brain is prioritizing short-term survival over long-term reality. That makes the beginning of these relationships incredibly dangerous, doesn't it?
Oh, incredibly.
Because manipulative dynamics usually start beautifully. She listens carefully, She makes him feel entirely understood. She offers this emotional intensity that he has probably never experienced before.
And for a man who has spent years or even decades emotionally disconnected from himself, that sudden, hyper-focused attention feels totally intoxicating.
It's like a drug.
It is a drug. It's not a slow, natural build of affection. It is a floodlight turning on in a pitch-black room. The contrast alone is what makes it so addictive.
Man, that floodlight effect. That really sets the stage for how this beautiful beginning morphs into a trap. Because trauma bonds are not formed by constant pain, right?
No, not at all. If it were just constant misery, he would eventually leave.
Right. Logic would kick in. The bond is actually formed by inconsistency.
Yes, inconsistency is the key.
One moment she gives him this intense affection, and the very next moment she becomes entirely distant. One day, he is the absolute center of her universe, and the next day, he's punished with silence.
And that inconsistency is the actual engine of the obsession. You see, predictability, even if it's predictably bad, allows the brain to adapt and eventually detach.
You just get used to the misery and you leave.
Exactly. But unpredictability, that keeps the nervous system in a perpetual state of hyper-arousal.
I mean, I'm thinking about the mechanics of this, and it perfectly mirrors a casino floor.
Oh, the slot machine dynamic.
Yeah, it's intermittent reinforcement. Think about it. If you sit at a slot machine and it pays out every single time you pull the lever,
Yeah.
it ceases to be a game. It's just a transaction. You'd get bored.
Right, there's no thrill.
Conversely, if it never pays out, you realize it's broken, you walk away. But because the machine pays out unpredictably, just often enough to keep hope alive, you keep pulling the lever.
You become completely obsessed with the potential of the reward.
Exactly.
And that casino analogy perfectly illustrates the dopamine loop at play here. When she pulls away and becomes distant, his brain releases a massive surge of cortisol, the stress hormone.
So he's physically in pain.
He feels immense anxiety, panic. He's scrambling to fix whatever he supposedly did wrong. Then, when she finally throws him a crumb of affection, the unpredictable payout, his brain releases a massive spike of dopamine.
Wow.
And because he was in such a deep state of stress, that dopamine hit feels astronomically high. Over time, his nervous system begins to associate her with both the agonizing poison and the euphoric cure.
So his brain is physically addicted to the relief from the anxiety that she caused.
Precisely. She becomes the disease and the medicine.
That fundamentally explains why the chaos becomes the baseline. To a brain wired for that intense cortisol dopamine roller coaster, the peace of a healthy, consistent relationship probably feels terrifyingly boring.
It feels completely flat.
Yeah, the intense highs and lows of toxicity, the waiting, the despair, and then that sudden validation, that feels like a pulse.
It does. The uncertainty forces him to constantly seek validation. The trauma bond just effectively bypasses logic because the brain is no longer seeking a healthy partnership. It's literally just seeking the next chemical payout to stave off the anxiety of withdrawal.
Which raises a really big question about vulnerability. I mean, why doesn't the slot machine work on everyone?
Right. Why do some guys walk away?
Exactly. If you put 10 guys in this dynamic, some will walk away immediately. To understand why certain men are so incredibly susceptible to this specific trap, we really have to trace the behavior back to childhood conditioning.
And a very specific profile of masculine loneliness.
Yeah. Unpack that for us. What does that profile look like?
We see this heavily in men who grew up in environments of emotional neglect. And, we aren't necessarily talking about overt physical abuse here.
Right, it's more subtle.
Very subtle. We're talking about households where a boy never truly felt emotionally safe, where love was highly conditional. These men learned very early on that they had to earn love through performance.
By being the good kid.
By being good, by not causing trouble, by getting good grades. They harbor this deeply rooted fear of abandonment, believing that their authentic self is inherently unlovable unless they are actively providing utility to someone else.
They learn to perform for affection. And when you take that foundational childhood wound and layer it with standard male societal programming, I mean, it creates a perfect storm.
It's a devastating combination.
From the moment they're young boys, men are handed these survival scripts. Be strong. Walk it off. Man up. Handle your problems alone.
Never show weakness.
Right. They're actively conditioned to bury their emotions rather than process or even understand them. So they build these massive internal vaults where all of this loneliness and insecurity is just stored away in the dark.
And the accumulation of that suppressed emotion is staggering. Because they aren't allowed to express vulnerability in their daily lives, they walk around carrying the weight of decades of unacknowledged isolation.
Decades. It's like having an emotional offshore bank account. The guy has been depositing all this heavy, unexpressed emotion there for 20 years, but he has no way to access it. He has no ATM card.
I love that analogy.
And then this intensely attentive woman comes along, and suddenly she provides the card. She breaks the vault open. Which makes me wonder, is he actually addicted to her as an individual? Or is he just addicted to the sheer relief of finally having an outlet for a lifetime of suppressed emotion?
That right there, that realization, is the psychological breakthrough. Many men who find themselves paralyzed in these toxic attachments stay not because they truly miss the woman herself, but because they miss who they became when they were around her.
The illusion of being seen.
Yes, they miss the temporary feeling of emotional safety. They miss feeling visible, maybe for the very first time in their adult lives.
Oh, yeah, that is heavy.
They miss simply having a designated place to put their love and their vulnerability. When she leaves, or when she engages in the distant phase of the cycle, it is not just a romantic partner leaving the room. The entire emotional outlet disappears.
The vault slams shut again.
It slams shut, and he is left entirely alone with all that accumulated weight.
So they aren't just heartbroken in the traditional sense. They are experiencing a profound emptiness.
A total void.
This brings us to the aftermath, the daily lived reality of how this trauma bond plays out when the relationship inevitably fractures. Because there's this silent emotional suffering that is incredibly pervasive.
And completely invisible to the outside world. Right. Men will go to the office, they'll hit their targets, they'll answer emails, go to the gym, laugh with their friends at the bar. But internally, they are running this exhausting diagnostic program every single night, staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., wondering what they did wrong.
Wondering why their love wasn't enough to fix her or fix the situation.
Exactly. It functions very much like a phantom limb pain, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. The relationship has been severed, but the neurological pathways still feel the ache of its absence. And there's a fascinating contrast in how grief is often processed across genders here.
How so?
Well, women, generally speaking, are more socially encouraged to process emotions concurrently. They talk to their support systems, they mourn the decline of the relationship while they're still in it.
They see the end coming and they process it in real time.
Right. By the time the relationship ends, a significant portion of the grieving is already complete. But men operate on a completely different timeline. They often process the emotional weight of the loss long after the fact. Weeks, months, or sometimes years later. It reminds me of an athlete taking a massive dose of adrenaline and painkillers before a big game. They sustain a severe injury on the field, but they keep running. They're thinking, I'm fine, I'm handling this, I'm being strong.
Because they have a job to do.
Yeah. It isn't until much later, when the game is over, the crowd is gone, and they're sitting alone in the locker room, that the medication wears off and the raw, unmitigated agony finally sets in.
And the danger of that delayed processing is that it hits them in total isolation.
Yeah.
Because their societal conditioning insists they remain stoic,
Yeah.
they have no vocabulary for the pain they're experiencing.
Not at all.
This delayed withdrawal is exactly what drives so many men back into the toxic cycle. The pain of the empty vault is so severe that they will return to the very source of their destruction just to make the withdrawal symptoms stop.
If the stoic isolation is the very thing delaying their healing, how does a man actually break this cycle? I mean, it seems almost impossible to escape a trap when every societal instinct tells you to just quietly undo it. How do you stop pulling the lever on the slot machine when it's the only game you know how to play?
The breakthrough happens through a radical shift in perspective. It requires, essentially, naming the ghost. A man must confront the profound realization that missing someone does not mean they were good for you.
Man, missing someone does not mean they were good for you. That is a heavy sentence.
It's transformative because it forces a separation between love and addiction. You have to realize that you are not grieving a genuine, nurturing partnership. You are grieving a chemical dependency.
You're grieving the slot machine.
You're grieving the chaotic cycle of intermittent reinforcement. When a man truly understands that the profound emptiness he feels isn't actually a lack of her, but a lack of his own self-worth that he temporarily outsourced to her, the healing can finally begin.
That's powerful.
The silent suffering loses its paralyzing power the very moment it is accurately named as an addiction, rather than some tragic romance.
So what does this actually look like in practice for someone listening right now? It means actively redefining what a healthy relationship feels like on a biological level.
Yes, completely rewiring the system.
If your nervous system has been wired for chaos, peace is going to feel incredibly alien. We'll feel uncomfortable. But peace is not boring. Peace is the baseline of health. Real love shouldn't leave your nervous system completely exhausted.
It shouldn't feel like a war zone.
Exactly.
Hmm.
It shouldn't require you to constantly perform or leave you perpetually anxious or force you to constantly earn your right to feel safe.
Choosing peace over emotional chaos requires a conscious, really difficult decision to stop the begging, to stop the chasing, to stop the obsessive checking of the phone for that unpredictable dopamine hit.
It's a detox.
It is. Society often tells men that holding on, enduring pain, and fighting for a relationship regardless of the personal cost is the ultimate sign of strength.
The whole "I won't give up on us" narrative.
Right. But the reality points to the exact opposite in these toxic dynamics. Enduring toxic pain isn't strength. It is a profound form of self-abandonment. Choosing to walk away from a trauma bond, choosing to sit in the uncomfortable quiet of withdrawal rather than return to the abuse, is one of the most fundamentally grounded masculine things a person can do. Healing is not a weakness. It is the ultimate expression of self-respect.
You stop doing the math on how to fix the broken slot machine, and you start doing the math on how to just get yourself out of the casino.
It is a terrifying transition. Moving from the intense screaming noise of a trauma bond into the quiet of your own company forces you to confront the very childhood wounds that made you vulnerable in the first place.
The quiet is loud at first.
Very loud. But navigating that quiet is the only permanent way to rebuild the foundation.
We've covered some incredibly heavy ground today. We looked at how the brain initiates a triage memory edit just to keep you trapped. We explored the cruel neurochemistry of intermittent reinforcement and the deep, often invisible childhood roots of masculine loneliness that set the stage for these bonds to even form.
It's a lot to process.
It is. But I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something that challenges the way we view the aftermath of these relationships. If the strongest version of a man isn't the one who holds on, but the one who finally has the courage to let go?
Yeah.
What if the terrifying emptiness you feel after walking away isn't actually a void waiting to be filled by someone else, but a clearing meant for you to finally meet yourself?